Oh, I got it if you want.
Okay, calling to order the curriculum committee with a roll call. Jeremiah Glonick,
Here.
Sherry Olson,
Here.
and myself, Gail Sari, we're here. The meeting was published in the Superior Telegram and posted through the district on webpage and throughout the district according to school board policy. Overview is the Northwestern High School course description book for 2023 to 2024. And item number 5 is the Wisconsin Act 105, adoption of the pupil to participate in sports or other organized physical activity as determined by the school board to complete an additional 5.5 credits in English, social studies, mathematics, science, or health education in lieu of 5 credits in physical education. Or 0.5, yeah. Okay, discussion? Okay, and we have Mr. Carlson here and Mr. Smith here,
And Brady Kroll.
Rena Kroll, and Mr. Janico, yeah. Okay. So parents are asking, or we're going to adapt this so that they would have to get an added half credit in English, social studies, mathematics, science, or health education in
Right.
lieu of physical education.
As per the law, those are the only
Right.
areas. So if it's okay to
Mhm.
ask Mr. Carlson to present?
Yes.
When this topic was first brought to our attention, we wanted to take a look at, just what the DPI had to say about it and and this was enacted in 2011. At that time, the DPI published a document that basically was called different factors for school districts to consider. If you are thinking about adopting this, DPI came with 13 different things that they said schools should consider if they are doing this. And so we went to that document, and I think you have in front of you what we titled Physical Education Requirement Option 2011 Wisconsin Act 105. The left-hand column, factors, those are the 13 different things that the DPI suggested that schools look at if they're considering doing this. And then we added the next 2 columns, the column consideration, just kind of from our aspect, went on to kind of explain what that meant, in addition to what we would have to do in response to that consideration. And then the right-hand column is just there just for added notes, further explanation, whatever the case would be. So, hopefully you had a chance to go through and read these.
No, they just received
Oh,
it.
you just got it, okay,
Yeah.
that's right, because we were still finishing it up.
Yep. So if we could go through each and every one.
Number one factor, really, is the top factor, and that is what will be lost for students as a result of decreasing physical education requirements. And again, these are from the DPI, these are not things that we came up with. And so, the number one consideration of that is it's a realization that PE is more than just physical activity. Students gain knowledge and learn skills that apply to lifetime activities, a variety of different things. Students are exposed to a variety of activities. Like I've always said, you can't play football like you did in high school when you're 35 or 40 years old. But there are other activities you learn in PE that you can, that are more recreational in nature. If you limit those options and opportunities, you limit options for kids to learn those types of things. And there's also samples of the standards for PE. There are certain standards that we have set by the state that aren't always part of being part of the sport. And Scott had listed a few of those, and I think he has a few other examples of things that happen in a PE class that don't necessarily happen in a sport or an activity. By limiting opportunities in that, kids would do that on that. The second thing, how will this provision be implemented equitably for all students, including those with limited physical abilities and disabilities? We have 5 IEPs, 504s, health plans that exist to reduce barriers and to provide accommodations to access programs that the school offers. The school would need to determine how implementing this provision would be open and available to all students. So again, students who have disabilities, what would that mean instead of being in a school sport? What would that mean for them to be doing some other type of activity? What accommodations would have to be created, and what would be the criteria for that? The third factor, how will the district protect itself from discrimination concerns and complaints, especially for activities that are limited to a few students? This relates to item 2, but opens the door even wider by including potentially situations that don't take disabilities into account. We may have to have some activities where players are cut if we have too many, if we don't have facilities, if we don't have coaches, if we don't have space. Fortunately, right now, I don't think we're in that situation, but I think we have been in the past, and it could be. So how do we make that equitable for those situations? Skills and transportation. There may be some kids that just do not have the skill to be in an alternative activity. Well, now they're being excluded from this option because they don't have the skill. Transportation. We may have some kids that are unable to. There may be family situations, maybe economic, where a student has to work instead of being in an alternative activity. They lose the option of making use of this option. So again, it's that whole equity and being equitable and providing opportunities for all kids. Number 4, will only school-based activities be allowed, or will community-based activities be permitted? As far as our consideration of that, if non-school activities are allowed, there's going to have to be a process provided that will need to be created to assure documentation of participation completion. We have to be documenting that. And again, there's any number of things, and then we'd have to create a criteria. Again, so there would be equity between the different options. Student comes and wants to say, well, hey, I'm involved in this, this should be an alternative activity. Well, we're going to have to look at that. Is that also something that's open for all other students? There may be equity issues in length of seasons. Golf is, let's say, 7 weeks. Basketball is 18 weeks. Where's the equitable part of that? We're giving credit for this, we're giving credit for this. Is that fair and equitable across the board? It comes down to being certified and licensed. To be able to get a high school credit, you earn credit by being instructed by someone who's licensed, someone who's certified. If we're looking at alternative types of things that are outside of the school, how can we be assured that these people are properly licensed and certified? How can we give high school credit for an activity that is not conducted by a licensed person? Again, not to say these things can't happen, but these are things that we would have to look at, investigate, and just see what would be involved. Number 5, will allowable activities be limited to those supervised by licensed educators. Kind of the same thing that I was talking about. What's the criteria? What type of criteria would we give? Number 6, will the activity require approval in advance or after completion? That one really is simple. It would have to be after completion. The kids would say, well, hey, I'm going to do this. Well, what if they never follow through on that? So for that part, we definitely have to be after completion. Number 7, will only certain types of physical activities be acceptable alternatives, or will any type? Again, creating a criteria that would need to be established to ensure equity and balance. Things to consider. What's the minimum type of physical skill development that's required? What level of sport participation? Is it participation, or is it actually playing and competing? At what level? C-level, JV, varsity. And then what would be an acceptable alternative with all those things. And then, of course, I added this today as I was kind of doing some last minute reflection on this. Define physical activity. We have to define what does that mean. The statute says alternative physical activity. What does that mean? Number 8, will a minimum amount of time be established for an alternative activity? Again, I already kind of talked about the different length of seasons. There's the equity in that. Someone who says, well, I play basketball, but this person plays golf, my season's twice as long, and I'm getting the same amount of credit as that person. You may have some people arguing the intensity of the activity. How hard are the students working? How long is the practice? What type of physical activity is actually involved? How will the district document completion of that activity, particularly if it's something that's outside the school purviews? Again, it would involve researching and developing and creating different types of record keeping. Designating somebody who's going to be responsible for that. And again, this links to some other things that will come up, like number 10. What if the student is injured or has some other medical condition during the period of the activity? If I say I'm going to play football and that's going to count, I want that to count for my PE credit. What if I get injured halfway through the season? Have I completed enough of the season to be able to be a part of it? Number 11 is the code of conduct. If the student breaks the code of conduct, does that violate, or does that take away their ability to substitute the credit for PE as far as that goes? Again, something we'd have to look at, equitable amount of time, equitable opportunities. Will the student be required to participate in the alternate activity during the same school year? So this, what I talk about here is, would a student be able to bank an alternative activity? In other words, did he get to be a junior and say, you know what, I don't want to take PE, or I'm unable to take PE, but I did play football 2 years ago. Can they go back and count that? Or would we require that whatever activity that they're substituting has to take place at the same time that they would have taken the PE class? So for example, 11th and 12th grade PE as a junior, I'm going to say, you know what, I want to substitute this PE credit for, to do this. They would have to do that at the same time. Is that something we would look at having to do? What if this activity, another consideration DPI came up with, what if the activity is scheduled for the student's senior year and it's not completed? Stipulations would have to be into effect that this would not be available during a student's spring semester or last semester as a senior. If they're to say, I'm going to run track as a senior, I want that to count as my PE. Well, what if they don't go off the track? What if they get injured? What if they become ineligible? Now they're sitting in their senior year without that PE credit because they were unable to do what they were planning on doing. Not all PE courses are eligible to be replaced. 9th grade, 10th grade, those are basically required courses. We couldn't count that. It would have to be for something after that, something would be more of an elective. I'm sorry, that gets into some things we came up with. So first 13 now, things that we kind of came up with that we were questioning, the one I just mentioned. There are certain requirements that we do have. Statute talks about above and beyond what's required. From a scheduling standpoint, PE classes are 9 weeks in length. Many times those classes are used to balance against another like a choir, like a band. If I have band during 3B, I'll take a PE during 3A or vice versa. We have art classes, we have foods classes, that a lot of times that's balanced as far as if I want to take an art class for 9 weeks, I'll take a PE class here. If we don't have that as an option for students, they may not be able to take some of those other 9-week classes. And scheduling is something that is something that most people, it's hard to understand if you're not actually in it, doing it, to see all that themselves. And then one last thing that I would mention, and I'll let everyone else kind of talk here, or have any questions. The last thing that I kind of became aware of was thinking about, when we talked about what's considered a core elective, we need to consider the fact that we have graduation requirements. So for example, math, we have 3 credits required for math. What we would be looking at then is an additional math class, a 4th math class above and beyond what's required. In English, we have 4 credits required for English. So we'd be looking at an additional English class. We have 5 English classes, which a lot of kids do anyway. But I'm just saying so that we're clear on what that means is that it's above and beyond what is required. Not necessarily by the courses, but by the departments and that type of thing. So just to kind of clarify what that might mean. So any questions, or is there anything you guys want to kind of add to my quick review of all of this information?
I guess I would just add, as the one who does schedules for all 400 of our high schoolers, this isn't really an issue that I've run into, trying to schedule PE classes. Occasionally, kids will have a hard time finding something to fit in their schedule, and we sit down together and create a plan, and sometimes that might be having some flexibility on maybe what PE class they take, or what, sometimes it's not bad, it could be a different department, but we have always been able to work out an option for students. And it doesn't happen very often. I think I had one last year that we sat down together and came up with a plan for how to meet their requirement and getting all of the other courses they were looking to do. Sometimes they just need a little extra help to plan it out because they are trying to take so many things.
One of the huge benefits of a block schedule like what we have is kids are able to take many more classes in a block schedule than they are in a typical 7-period day. So when we're talking PE, for example, our PE classes are 9 weeks. In a typical school calendar, a PE class is half a year. In a typical school calendar, algebra lasts all year long. For us, it's half a year. And so just by the nature of the block, when people say, well, I can't fit everything in, it's like, that's the beauty of the block schedule. With a little bit of planning, a little bit of forethought, and then sitting down with Brina, if you kind of hit a brick wall on something, it's almost impossible not to get everything that you want on rare occasions, but then, you come up with some ideas with that. So again, it's there, I think these are 16 terms that kids have the opportunity to fit classes into, which is much more than a typical high school schedule.
And throughout high school, especially as a junior and senior, there are term classes that they have to take to graduate, such as personal finance, social issues, and so with my scheduling brain, they take a 1-quarter class, they have to take another quarter class to go along with it, so it makes it easy to pair like personal finance with a Phi Ed, or their social issues required course with another social studies that's, they have to take 3 credits of that. So we schedule them in a way where kids can like pair them up. So they can take 2 term long required courses without losing a slot, if that makes sense.
Can we talk about the single letter that we received in favor of this, and how it is or is not a help for those students wanting to do band and choir and have freedom in their schedule?
Well, as what I said, with the block schedule, there's many more opportunities to take more classes than the typical schedule. And then I think there's been very few instances, and again, has already kind of spoken of it, very few instances where kids are unable to fit everything in that they want to take.
Including both band and choir, and be able to get advanced classes that they can figure it out.
Like most of our seniors come into senior year meeting almost all of their graduation requirements except for English 12 and maybe a few other courses like maybe personal finance or social studies they have left to take, so they can schedule 8 credits a year if they're not taking any study hall. And so like as a junior or senior, 2 of those credits could be then required, but they can also be lots of other choices. I see transcripts from a lot of other high schools, like we've had kids transferring from Duluth this year, and a lot of those schools are only offering kids maybe 5 or 6 credits a year. Superior is also like Superior's graduation requirements 23 credits because their kids are only taking 6 credits a year. So our kids are already getting quite a few more credits. They can take up to 32, and that's if they choose not to do anything additional like early college credit program and things like that. So we have some that graduate with even more than 32 credits. So we offer a lot of opportunity, more so than other high schools because of our how we schedule, which is pretty cool to see as kids come in, and I'm seeing transcripts from other schools where they're only earning 5 to 6 credits a year. So being able to take up to 8 is pretty great, I think.
One of the things we talked about are unintended consequences. Would doing this potentially cost the district more money? The person who wrote the letter said no. I beg to differ, but
Well, yeah, I've thought about that too, and you know, I think, if I remember right, in the letter, they're talking about upper level classes. I don't know if they talked about early college credit or start college now, but I think that's kind of the you know, I took kind of the implied when you talk about upper level. So if we're looking at trying to clear up space, so to take an early college credit course, I guess theoretically, you could be talking about adding additional opportunity to take the early college credit course, which does cost the district money. But you know, we do that because it's good for kids. But in this, with that question in mind, yeah, I mean, I guess theoretically it could increase some opportunity to do that. But again, I still go back to saying that they have the opportunity to take as many of those classes as they want within our current schedule. So I don't think it, you know, you can say it's additional, but I don't know if it would be because, again, what
they
we're
already have
saying
the
is
chance to do.
students would be able to take whatever classes they would want to anyway.
Okay.
So can I ask, did this all come up because there were some parents that were requesting?
I've heard nothing from anybody.
Oh, so,
No
Two
one has-
parents, two from one family and one from another approached Adam Landwork. I then followed through with adding this to the agenda for the curriculum committee to discuss.
And this is, no parent has contacted me as far as this being an issue or a problem. I don't know about any of the other
And
three
from
of
a
you.
scheduling standpoint, I haven't had anyone reach out to me. Like I said, I have one student this year that, well, for last spring, we sat down together to create a plan, and as far as I know, he's really comfortable with the plan.
Were they trying to get more classes in or?
So, some of the things that kids can run into is if they're trying to take things that are only offered once a year, there's not as much flexibility. Say they wanna take college calc all year long, right? That's only in one spot. We only have one section of it. They take AP chemistry or AP English, sometimes they get, I call it boxed into, they can't move a class. And so, we sit down together and just look at what our options are and so him and I came up with an option and he was happy with. But if, like, I would say, Mr. Smith, Mr. Carlson, myself, and Ms. Forsythe, we try to be really creative with kids if we need to be, because Mr. Carlson's laughing because I'll come to him and say, can we make this work, or can we try to do this? And our teachers are pretty good about that. If we ever run into a situation where someone really wants that experience, we really do our best to try to make it work, but it hasn't been an issue for, I can't think of an example of someone that I haven't been able to get them for any class.
So one of my questions would be, how many kids would jump on this? And, you know, you're in sports, so now, but those, sounds like not many, right? Because you have plenty of chances that you're trying to, it's gonna be the kid that wants to really jump on, taking a lot of extra AP classes or something, right?
I mean, honestly, I couldn't tell you because I don't have a list of kids that have been struggling to figure this out that I'm aware of. I mean, there might be kids who have felt that way, who never came in and said, I don't know how to make this work, or, but, so most, I guess, maybe Mr. Janow can answer this better than me, but most of the kids that I know that are really involved with athletics really love to be involved with credit as well. So they
Right.
usually, a lot of them are usually taking more than the credit and a half that's required, from what I see.
Depends on whether we're talking about like a WA sport, or we're talking like like the statute says, other activities.
Right, yeah.
Until we define that, if this moves forward, until we define that, it's hard to say. Because that will impact different kids in different ways.
Plus, I mean, can you be like a team manager and get credit for being?
That's what we would have to define.
Wow.
It can be kind of challenging as you start to think about our kids are involved in a lot of things. I mean, we have cross-country ski club. Does the club that means for fun count like I know you're a wrestling fan, like the wrestling team, or does being part of a club wrestling team count when it's not sanctioned by the WIAA, or we have kids who play lacrosse? You know, we have kids in a bowling league. I mean, we're not, so there's a lot of things our kids participate in, so trying to determine which ones would count or wouldn't count get a little fuzzy as far as like some of these questions that the DPI would have us answer as far as equity goes.
That's where defining what is physical activity. What does that mean? Defining that, the equity part of, what does count, what doesn't count. And, licensing, certifications, and all those things that we went through all would go into determining that. And it's not an issue of us doing a lot more work, that's what we do, but it's just making sure that we cover everything, from the district standpoint, from the kids' standpoint, that we go into this and we don't have any more questions. And like anything else, the more we dig into this, the more questions are going to come up. And again, it's not about time and work and energy. It's about making sure that we're being equitable, we're being fair, and we're covering all the bases for everybody's benefit.
Is there any school in our conference that's doing this?
There are schools in our conference that do this at different levels. Right now, there are 5 in our conference that do provide credit. But one of them says that the only time to do it is if it's just impossible to fit the PE class into the schedule. It's not carte blanche. One district is considering doing this, but they have a whole different way of what they do. They have individualized learning plans, and when I got the information from that school, they said that they're looking at this. They have a team that's investigating this, and what would include would be modifying the graduation requirements based on the student's individualized learning plan. So would that be a blanket thing? It would be based on each individual student, what their individualized learning for regular. I'm not talking special ed for IEPs. They are now moving to a situation where each student is having an individual learning plan, 4-year program, and we would have to fit into that.
So those out of the districts that are doing it, I'm sure they have some guidelines with all the questions that we came up with, so how did they?
And I have not looked into that.
Not that we have
That
to
would
copy
be-
anybody else, but it's just nice to know what others are doing.
That would be, that would be part of the research. If we move forward with that, we would definitely be the things we would look at, that would be part of our process for putting together our policy. I have not done that yet, not knowing what this group is going to propose.
I would also be interested to know if you looked into that, how many credits those schools offer each year to kids. And if maybe that might be why they want to do it.
And then what kind of schedule? Maybe they have a more restricted schedule than we have as far as offerings.
As someone who's scheduled in a much smaller school, like the smaller school you have, the more difficult it is because there's just less options. There's less kids, but there's also less options of where to put things, so I can see it.
Because that would be the question. The schools that do offer, are you on a 7-period day, are you on a 5-period trimester thing, or are you on a block? Is that, again, Mrs. Kroll was saying that. That increases the flexibility with our block, even with every 2 credits, which is 4 more than we require.
Be interesting to find out how many of those 5 schools actually have block scheduling.
In our conference, I don't think there's anyone that has the block schedule that we do. There are some districts in the last 8 years that I know of that have gone to a trimester schedule. That means they may have 5 classes per term. Go through, but I don't know exactly how it is set up. Going back to the very first thing, as far as when you're looking at substituting a core class for a PE class, looking at the standards, and many of the PE standards, I'm sure, without me looking at them, many of them, I'm sure, you can say, well, let's take leadership. You can say, well, leadership, you learn leadership by being a captain on a football team. First of all, not everyone can be captain of a football team. Second of all, not everyone's going to get to that varsity level to have that experience. But the difference between providing leadership, because I think, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, leadership is one of the standards that we have for PE of that type of thing.
It suggests, there's one standard that, provide opportunities for that to occur. Those become teachable moments. Sometimes you put kids in positions and provide opportunities for that leadership to blossom. Some kids can pop right in and go, and some kids need a little urging, a little setup. Okay, I'm going to put you in charge of this group today. Here's what I'd like you to do, and sometimes you have to. So yes, there's some standards that apply. We want to develop that confidence to be involved in the charge of a group and lead. Yes.
And the difference is, in PE class, you're there with typically kids your own age, not always, but you're there with kids of different backgrounds, different experiences, different passions. Whereas if you're in a sport, and I know I always pick it up, I'll say wrestling. In wrestling, you may be the team captain of the wrestling team. You may be a leader in the wrestling room or practice. But that's with kids that share your same passion. That's with kids that share your same background. That's with kids that you've probably gone to multiple weekend tournaments in the summer and you hang around with all the time. That's different leading kids that think like you, as opposed to being in a PE class, which is much more eclectic, much different students, kids that you may not be friends with, but like Scott said, you're put in positions where you're leading a group, or if it's team sports, you're leading a group of kids in this team, against. So it's just a different type of leadership. And I think, when we look at, there's a lot of comparisons you can make, I'm sure. If you take all these standards from PE and standards support, but it's not the same thing. And it's not the same lessons. Nutrition are all things that, are talked about in different PE classes. Things like that, one would hope you talk about in sports, but not always. And so, again, I just kind of go back to that number one factor. I think it's listed by the DPI as number one for a reason. It just says that, if the state didn't think PE was important, they wouldn't require a credit cap. And to to remove one of those credits, to me, it's like saying, well, this class really isn't important. And we have it as a requirement, the state has a requirement. And I guess for us to say, this is more important for you to do than to do this, I think sends the wrong message.
Mr. Smith, as the athletic director, what is your recommendation and why?
Well, philosophically, I'm opposed to this. I'm also a licensed FIAD teacher. So I believe the FIAD can offer certain things that athletics maybe can't. The inclusivity, the broad field, lifetime type stuff. Kids go out for sports for a lot of reasons, a lot of good reasons. I'm not sure going out for a sport just so I get FIAD credit is a real decent reason. I have a lot of concerns with the whole, what if they're ineligible, or if they get hurt, or if they quit. I don't like the coach, so I'm gonna quit. Oh, but now what? I get hurt, I get a code violation, I'm academically ineligible, all those things can be disruptive to a team, which is, as AD concerns me. Specialization is a concern to me. Kids are specializing more and more each year. They're only gonna play one sport. Now they play on one sport, so they get to fight also. It's specialization a little bit, so those are kind of, I dealt with this in my past a little bit when I came out in 2011, and philosophically, I don't like it. I'd like to keep the requirements and the co-curriculars separate. That's just me.
Scott?
What he said.
Okay. Sabrina?
I don't like to stray away from graduation requirements. I feel like it's almost saying that requirement isn't as important as other graduation requirements. There's a lot that happens in the class, and I think that in FIAD, when we have kids, so we have my mental health and we have kids who are struggling in any way, Mr. Janico works with us, we have kids who have an injury, everyone is included, right? And so in a sport or other activities, you can't always have that same level of support, or it's not, like if you're injured and you can't play the sport, can you earn credit? Well, Mr. Janico always will work with us on how a student can find a way to participate. Often allows them to take a different kind of leadership role while they're injured, or maybe have received some type of concussion or something that they can't participate in the sport. They find ways to help them through it in FIAD. And so I worry about saying that this graduation requirement is as important as the other.
Another thing I gotta worry about is we can ask the coaches to get grades in. Most kids are in FIAD. Okay, they may not be real comfortable doing that. If we, not teacher coaches, most of our coaches are teachers, not FIAD teachers.
Not FIAD.
We got 2 FIAD teachers. Who's gonna grade that kid? Now the coach gives the kid a C or a D, and the parents are using other reasons for this.
I will also just say that, like, if we're talking grades, that's a whole nother subject, right? Do they earn a letter grade or not? If we say they earn a P,
Satisfactory.
if they earn a P for a pass,
Yeah.
I will, like, it's a known fact that in our GPA system, P's can actually boost GPAs because it's it's math. We should bring your factoring it out of the lower, dividing your GPA score out of less classes. So it's one of those things that could be an unintended consequence that we don't always think about. So I think the state sets requirements to graduate and that we should keep them as they are.
Mr. Janico, you had your hand up, or was that a squiggle?
I didn't mean to pass the buck with Mr. Smith a second. I have the opportunity to see these kids in class every single day. And I get a special window that no one else gets. I watch I watch kids teach other kids. I watch, because we're talking about our athletes, I see the impact that our athletes have on the whole class. Not just other athletes, all of the kids. I have a class of 24 kids. It's a junior, senior class, 2 sophomores in. It's a semester-long class because it's a skinny. Mr. Carlson said there are 9 classes. It's a skinny class, so it's half. So it's broken in half, so semester-long class. The first week of class, we have a really unique kid in this class. And the other kids, the class is made up of probably majority athletic kids, athletes in this class, but not all. The kids would give this unique kid kind of a free pass all the time. In other words, he never got out when we played softball, never got tagged out when we played this game, never got out when we played that game. It didn't take long, and all of a sudden the kids, and this had nothing to do with me. Over the short period of time, the kids, whoever, on their own, well, this is not good for this person. So they decided periodically to, you're out. Okay? That unique kid didn't handle that very well. Left the game, sat on a bench by himself. Now he's a he, so now you know it's him. This went on for a little bit, but it got better. Because periodically he would, you're out. Periodically he wouldn't, he'd hop right back in the game. So my point is it got better over time. Last week he fell off the wagon just a little bit. We had an incident, you're out. And he went into that, put his head down and didn't want to play more. Had a student come up to him in the transition between offense and defense, outfield, infield, hitting, softball game. This kid went up to him, who's laying on the floor, and said, hey, come on, you're okay, get up, let's play. The kid got up, got back in line, and kept playing. The person that told him was the other 10th grader. This isn't a class of juniors and seniors. The first week of class, that 10th grader wouldn't have said a word. But look at the progress that 10, 12 weeks has made on this kid to have the courage to go in front of the whole class and tell that kid, hey, get up. You're okay, you can play. That's half the story. The second half of the story is the progress that this unique kid made over the course of time. Those kinds of progresses, those kinds of things don't happen without our best being in those classes. I get to see that every day. I get to watch them teach each other. I get to watch that growth every single day. And it's hard to measure. It's hard to find that in this book. But I can see it every day. And if we eliminate those kids from class, those opportunities are less. Those opportunities to be leaders, those opportunities to teach each other, those less opportunities. One more quick story, then I won't talk. I got another class, the same 24 kids. This is a more diverse group of kids. Some athletes, all juniors and seniors, some that would rather not ever see a gym in their lives once they graduate from high school, a whole melting pot of students, a whole mixed bag of kids in this class. I got a young girl that I've never seen in class before. She's a senior. There's been some homeschool, that COVID that kicked in, unfortunately, kept us out of school. I've never seen this girl in class. Her skill level in class is very, very low when it comes to playing. We were playing ball in class, softball. She had a glove on, had to teach her how to put her glove on the first day. This is a senior. The ball got hit to her. She stuck out her hand and she caught the ball. She immediately jumped up in the air and was so excited. And by the time she landed, the rest of the kids in class were doing the same thing for her. They were so excited. So for that moment, she was the queen. All attention was focused on this girl. Okay? Our athletes were in that class. She did that in front of 24 other kids. Many of whom were pretty darn good athletes. Some of these kids played for our high school baseball team and softball team in that class. Those were the ones cheering right along with the rest of the kids. She's gonna remember that for the rest of her life. Forever. She will never, I guarantee you, that moment, she's not gonna forget. As they were walking off, because I was out number 3, one of the girls went up and gave her a fist bump, a little high five. That's a big deal. That stuff doesn't happen without those kids in class. Again, it's hard to measure that, it's hard to find that in this book. But again, I get to see it every single day in class. And again, I think having our kids in class in those situations, in those settings, is pretty powerful stuff when those things. I like to think that happens every single day. It doesn't, but it happens often. And I really think our kids need to be in class.
Mr. Carlson, you already expressed your concerns or anything more you wanted to add?
No, I think, going through this and having us put this together, I think, and what they said, I don't really have anything
More to add?
to that.
Chairperson, it's up to you.
Yep. Is there any other questions that any of you would have?
I thought this was a lot more cut and dry.
I was gonna say, I had made up mine, I thought, well, that's a no-brainer, but now with
Yeah.
all of this, it's
Well, it's
the
always
whole-
good, it's so good to hear more.
Yeah, the
yeah.
whole scheduling thing is what which
Yeah.
is kind of, I'm putting the brakes on, because you're right, if you pair it with the student is taking, one class, the opposite semester is the FIAD class, that's gonna cause, scheduling is complicated enough. To now throw that in there too, I think, for me, I don't see the very first main factor as much as an issue. I think they do get a lot of those skills when they're in their sport, and I do believe that the kids that love the athletes are going to take FIAD no matter what. That's most of them will, I think, but the whole scheduling thing is what we see.
And I think since we haven't really had any difficulties finding,
Well, and that's why I asked what
Yeah.
brought this about, because if it's been around since what
2011.
Yeah. I find a value in having FIAD class, and this is less than I had to take when I was in school.
Same here.
Yeah, so, sorry, I have no problem with it.
I get they're kind of trying to maybe reward somehow kids putting time in playing the sport, which is a lot of time, but it's not, with our scheduling, it doesn't, you're not blocking what you can't take if you want to take extra
Mhm.
math or see where the
Mhm.
problem is. It's actually opening up a bunch of can worms here. Not a question.
Mhm.
So,
Okay. When I was getting FIAD class, we didn't have girls' sports yet. I still was doing volleyball and softball. But, it wasn't with other school districts, and I wish it would have been. So,
They talk a lot about the brain, the development of the brain,
Yeah.
and movement and all of that, I see that piece.
so what is your pleasure here, board?
You
Committee?
need to come up with a recommendation
Mhm.
to be able to say
Right.
20 minutes from now.
Right,
so I would recommend that we do not move forward with this, with the Wisconsin Act 105.
That's right.
Yeah, motion for that, right?
sure. If you want to, it's up to the rest of the board members, it's consensus, yes.
Consensus, right?
Okay, I feel the same way, so.
I did coming in, but
Yeah,
It's, thank you for coming
It is
and,
the 50th anniversary of Title IX this year. 1979, Title IX started.
yeah.
It's the 50th anniversary.
And after I graduated from high school, I was playing volleyball with the different towns in the area, and I was at the Poplar School, still participating. I Heck, there was 10 kids in my family. We played softball and if I could hit the hay barn door, I knew I was doing good. So I think physical activity it's cut down from what it used to be. So I agree. So thank you very much for coming in and sharing your interesting discussion here. So,
Thank you for your opportunity for us.
oh, thank you. Thanks for bringing it so we have a better understanding too.
And we'll continue to work with kids.
Sure, if there's
Their
anyone,
best opportunity to take
they can come
classes, they
and
will.
talk with, yeah. And we haven't really had any. Okay, thank
Before
you.
the committee adjourns, Mark, is there anything more on this?
No,
This is just
nothing-
information?
Yeah,
We had some very minor course book changes, this is just a little summary of it.
Oh, okay.
Nothing really was added, nothing substantial was subtracted. So what I provided here is just kind of a rundown of just some of the minor revisions and changes.
Mhm.
Just, we call it cleaning it up.
Right, yeah. No. And there again, like I said, I know some students who would go to Superior School District because they had less requirements for graduation. So this has been for how many years? We've been higher than the surrounding area too, so good job.
And we do offer now an alternative diploma in case kids
Right,
can't reach
correct.
the 28, and we work with our transfer kids who don't have the same opportunity to earn 28 credits.
Mhm.
But it is
Right.
interesting to see like how many more opportunities kids out here to take classes.
Correct.
We did transfer to their students.
So block scheduling is right. I remember that discussion too. Thank you. So,
Make a motion to adjourn.
okay, motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, thank you.